Okay, everybody, I think we can get started. Welcome everybody to today's talk on the networking channel. We will be having a discussion on the topic of how to survive a PhD, fears and issues. And this is a perspective from students. It will be organized as a panel, and we have it led by Professor Edmundo de Souza Silva from Brazil, who is a highly accomplished researcher and is somebody who is also very well known in our community as an advocate for students. On the panel, we will have several students. We will have David Córdova, who is a PhD student from Sorbonne University in Paris, France. We have Chen, who is a first-year PhD student at Zhejiang University in China. We have Ananda Streit, who is a third-year PhD student at Federal University of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. We have Amir, who is a PhD student from University of Massachusetts Amherst in the United States. And we also have Chen, who is a PhD student from Myanmar. Before we start, we also wanted to mention that the networking channel is not just this one talk, it is a series of talks. And 2 weeks from now, we will have our next talk on the topic of software-defined networking experience in the Asia-Pacific region, led by Bruce Davey. And this talk is, or this panel is going to examine the commercial impact of software-defined networking on the Asia-Pacific region, the early adoption of network virtualization in Japan, and a security-focused use case known as internet separation in the context of SD-WAN. So it should be very interesting. We're trying something a little bit different with this one. It's going to be held at a different time than usual. It's going to be held at 9 a.m. Japan time, which we hope will make the event more accessible to people in different parts of the world, including from the Asia-Pacific region. But we do hope everyone will join anyway. So with that, we'd like to start today's panel. We'd like you to interact with the panelists. You can ask questions using the Q&A Zoom feature. You can also post questions on the Slack channel. And I'm going to turn things over to Edmundo, who's going to be leading the panel today. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Matt. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever to everyone. I guess we get a good crowd and wonderful students. And Matt and I've been working with students with a great pleasure to work with the students and to come up with, try to convey some of their impressions about what's the feeling of going through a PhD. So most of PhD students, in fact, even when I was a PhD student some time ago, we feel that we are alone in the world or something like that. So they will give. We hope that with this panel helps you to go through this process. And as Matt said, we are going to run some polls. And at some point, so we do encourage you to answer the polls. It would help a lot to go to this panel in a very informal way. And you can also ask individual questions, clicking the question and answer link below the screen. And we'll select some of the questions for our panelists to talk about. Okay, so folks, without further ado, let's start. And I will ask a first question to the students, and after I'm done, we are going to run our first poll while the speakers are talking about the question. Okay, the first question to all of you guys, and you can raise your hand once you pick up the question, is during the PhD, in fact, it happened to all of us, many students mentioned that they feel a lot of pressure going and different kinds of pressure. And I'd like to hear from each one of you and also from the audience, if you feel some pressure and what is your feeling? What can you tell the other students that are listening? So should we start? And I'm gonna select someone to start just to break the ice. David, can you start?
Yes, of course. Hello to everybody. Well, just to answer your question, yes, of course, I do feel a lot of pressure during my PhD. I think this is a constant for every PhD student, you know, like I think we all feel some pressure during our PhD. And for me, I mean, doing my PhD in France, here, the pressure is most about publishing, about get to publish the most as possible. And it's actually, it might be a requirement to get your degrees in some universities. So this adds a lot for the pressure. So I will say that this is like the main pressure that French students feel during their PhD.
Thank you, David. Let's go to another view from our panelists. And you panelists, you can ask questions to each other also. Let's run in a very informal way. And so don't forget to press the poll. And let's say, Ananda, what can you say about the pressure? Can you tell us something?
Yes, yes, of course. Yeah, during my academic life in general, I have felt a lot of different types of pressure. One of them is that I feel that since I'm in the field of computer science, and this is a field that has a lot of different, the majority are male. Sometimes I felt the need to work very hard to achieve good results, achieve good notes, and so nobody would question my capabilities. And I think I got a little bit competitive because of that, but that's not something that I feel so much anymore. I've got used to the university. I've gotten known my colleagues better as well. So now I think the pressure is mostly to deal with big deadlines and also to be continuously organized so I can keep focused and motivated. I don't know if, yeah, I don't know if
Okay.
the other students also have felt something similar to me.
Yes, so we have some both mentioned, well, Ananda mentioned different pressures that she felt from David. So we went from France to Brazil. Now let's go to China. I tell the students that they should work as Chinese students that work 24/7 hours, right? Xiang, is that a pressure? Work 24 hours per day?
Yes, I think so. So from my perspective, I feel a lot of peer pressure, and I agree with David and Ananda. And for example, in our university, students need to compete for scholarships, and only the students who publish many papers are qualified to get their scholarships. And our salary can only cover our basic life expenses. So every student in our university will try their best to compete for scholarships. And in this year, I also applied for scholarships, but I failed because my peers who work in other topics publish a lot of papers. So it brings a lot of pressure to me because I didn't have enough money, and I have to work very hard to win scholarships next year.
So thanks. Yeah, we different things, publish scholarships. Being a woman in an environment has to study so much. Let's say, have to study a lot. What about you, Khin? What can you say? Should I ask you, Khin or Sue? I'm.
Yes, Sue. Sue is
Sue,
okay.
okay.
But yeah, anyway, it's okay. Thank you for the question. So for me personally, of course, like doing a PhD is kind of like we got a lot of pressure from different perspective, especially if someone who study in abroad, kind of like so many things to adapt, kind of like different education systems and so many things. But for me, the main pressure that I feel is like whether the solutions or the problem I'm solving is kind of like, am I doing the right thing? Or like, will it be really useful thing or not? Or the other thing is like the solution I'm thinking, is this whether it's really useful or correct? This is the most pressure that I receive. Kind of like, am I going in the right track? I'm doing the right thing. This is kind of like the pressure that came in my head just all the time. Yeah, this is kind of like I want to feel pressure.
Yes.
So because
yeah. Go ahead, please.
Yes. So for the publication, of course, it's really important to become a PhD. We need like journal publications that would be kind of like what kind of grade at least we have to publish. So but to publish the paper, the problem we are solving, the finding we are trying to attack, and also the solution we are trying to present is very important. It should be something interesting to the world. And meantime, it should be useful because we are using our time. So it should be something useful. So that makes me kind of like a pressure whether I'm doing the good things or not. Yes.
Yes, that's a very important issue as well. And let's hear from Amir, now from the US.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, there are many situations that cause me panic and high stress, such as times when I have more work than I can do, also the times when I come across difficult problems, like my research that seems unsolvable. I should say that the most log pressure for me is to complete all the tasks and all the commitments on time. I usually get saturated because the topics I study are related and diversity is low. And personally, when I get fed up, I can just switch to another topic and be productive. Presentation also gives me a lot of pressure because I always feel quite nervous while I am presenting.
So, yeah, thank you, Amir. And we want to hear from the audience. Is the poll okay? One, we're going to close the poll number one and see what the audience, what the other students feels. If they feel pressure, if they don't feel. 1, 2, and the poll is closed. Okay, let's see if we get the answer. Right. Okay.
Wow.
Matt, can you tell about something about this answer?
Yeah, sure. So the question was about how much stress or negative emotion do you feel as a student? And, surprising or not, the amount of stress is clearly, quite high and moderate. As somebody who works with students, I guess I'm not that surprised. Students come and, talk to me a lot about these stressful situations. And I think, we all have stress. I mean, professors have stress too. And, so like, I think it's good to know that others also feel stress. Yeah.
I'm also impressed about the 10% of the people who answer have a tiny bit of stress or non-stress. I would like to know how do they do to don't have any kind of stress during the PhD. If you can share with us this formula, that would be great.
Sure.
Yes, in fact, I was surprised by that as well. Guys, you are not working hard. I'm just kidding. But yeah, it would be nice if you, those who answer that, say, what do they do to release stress? And we are continue to talk about the topic. And I'd like to run probably the other poll that we have. So we learn from you that most people have moderate stress, but what about the stress itself? Let's run the second poll number 2. Okay, so poll number 2 is there, and remember, you can send go to question and answer and send your questions or answer or ask the question that David asked. And before we go to the polls, okay, you have tell us gives the most amount of pressure in academic life. And before going to the second answer to the speakers, I'd like to hear from David, no, from Matt. Matt, did you feel pressure during your PhD?
Oh, absolutely. I felt a lot of pressure. There was, pressure to, write papers and get papers published. I remember when I first started, I didn't have any papers, and I looked around my research group and I saw everyone else had all these papers and I didn't. And, I felt a lot of pressure and I didn't know how to get started. And so, yeah, definitely.
Yes, and for myself, I just remember a story that was funny. I forgot about that, but it's funny. I once felt a pain in my chest, and I went to the university hospital to see what's going on. So I did the several exams, and then the doctor came to me and said, "Look, your exams looks okay. Tell me what you feel." And then he asked, "What are you doing here at the university?" I said, "My PhD." He said, "Oh, don't worry, that's common." Everyone, the pressure go away and your chest pain go away, and that's true. So we all feel a lot of pressure. Now let's. What's interesting that for people, scholarship, a competition for scholarship is very important, and being a woman in a most men environment creates a pressure and competition. Publish, of course, publish. We all feel pressure about publish, and an important problem. Solution, is our problem okay or not okay? Do you is the problem useful or it's novel? All these things about how choosing the problem, and presentation is also. And I'm surprised that I didn't hear anyone talking about a language problem, because I was a foreign student, and probably most of you are, maybe not, but was. And nobody talk about language, and we can discuss that. But first, let's go to the second question that I'd like to finish, but I'd like some discussion about that. About the what gives the most amount of pressure for you? It's not the pressure that you feel, but what's the worst pressure that you felt through the PhD, or your worst nightmare that it haunts you during those years?
Can I start?
Of course.
Okay, thank you. Well, for me, it's the big deadlines, like a very important work, and the deadline is very close. So sometimes I don't have nightmares, I don't sleep. I ignore my personal life entirely, and stop the external activities, yeah, in order to meet these deadlines. And then after the deadline, there is also an effort that is to get back to how I was before, to get back to my personal life again. And yeah, that's something that moves a lot energy from me.
Yes, who would like to pick up continue to answer? What's your worst fears?
Well, I want to continue this part, like I believe it was Amir that says in the first question about, this fear about the presentation, like when you get to the first conference and you have to present your work. I mean, this was my worst nightmare. The first time I did that, I was so nervous, I could barely speak. It was a nightmare. So for me, I think this was the worst part for me, like having how could I say, like confidence enough to be confident enough to talk in public and talk about a solution that only me and my inner academic circle knows about it. And I mean, I'm sure there are going to be other questions from other people I didn't know, and that was kind of scary also. So this is one of the things. And also I want to come back with you, Edmundo, about the language things, because I am a foreign student in France, and like just to being able to to doing my PhD in French and improving my writing and oral skills in English. I mean, all these mixed things, it was very complicated for me as well.
And David, talking about language, cultural difference, I would like each one to see, for those who are in a foreign country, if you felt cultural difference. Let's go around and then I return to you, David. Let's go around. What about you, Sue?
Yes, yes, it's really, yeah, the culture difference. I want to talk that. Well, actually, I was studying in Thailand, so it's kind of like I'm also from Asian country, Myanmar, so we don't have much different culture gap. But when I actually studied there, I faced kind of like culture difference, and also the education system is quite different. So the culture difference, the education system difference, and also the language. When I have to talk with my advisor, so kind of like we are different. I mean, culture, and also we have different, the mother language, we have different language. So for me, it's like I speak Burmese, and my advisor, he talk like Thai language, and also we communicate in English. So it's kind of like a very big challenge for me studying abroad like that. And also the most important thing is like how to present my paper. I mean, it's like the finding. So when I try to explain everything I find out in my lab and everything into like English, like the writing skill is really, really a big challenge for me. How can I write these kind of finding, how to explain, you know, this is really big challenge for me, and it's really nightmare, the writing, and also like, because the presentation and communication is quite important. We need to present our finding to advisor, the academic boards, and also like presentation in the conference or like that. So these are really big challenge for me, and it's kind of like nightmare. Yeah.
Yes. And
Yes.
what about you, Amir?
Yeah, the worst part of my PhD is definitely paper rejection, actually. I know it is normal to happen, but it is a terrible feeling once I get the rejection email. When I get it, I start to read the comments and verify if they are reasonable, and if the paper is rejected just because the reviewers didn't understand the situation, I get very angry. And anyway, I finally accept this fact, and then I start to implement suggestions and submit the paper somewhere else, and they all take a long time in my experience. So it's actually a long nightmare to just get a paper rejection.
Yes, nightmare can be something that happens really. And what about you, Xiang?
Yeah, I agree with Amir, and I think for me, the worst part is also the paper rejection. And when I was a young student, I wrote my first paper under the supervision of my advisor. But unfortunately, this paper was rejected, and I feel very upset. And my advisor encouraged me to carefully revise the paper and submit the paper again. And I followed his instructions. But what I didn't expect was that the paper was rejected multiple times. But we still try to polish our paper, and we believe in our values. And finally, this paper was accepted. So I think my main takeaway is that if we face rejections, we should believe in ourselves and our papers. And we should never give up, and the results would be satisfactory in the end.
This is great. This is a good advice, because when you first have your paper rejected, it's like, oh my God. But it happens to everyone. It happens to everyone. It's part of life. Don't feel discouraged by that. And before we have great questions here to people. And before reading, I asked Matt to read the first question. It's a very nice question. And I would like you all to, at the end of the panel, tell your advisor to other students. What is your main advisor in terms of life, in terms of how to deal with pressure, everything? But Matt, could you please tell us some of the questions, ask the question from our audience, please?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. So there's a question about how do you deal with pressure when you have no publications compared to your peers? So your peers have a bunch of publications and you don't. You feel they're doing better than you. You're not doing good enough in what you do. You know, what sort of approaches do you guys feel to deal with that?
Who would like to answer that?
I think I can answer this question. From my perspective, I think my pressure is acceptable because I can find several ways to resolve my pressure. I think the first way is to do some sports because it can fresh my mind and help me improve my work efficiency. And I think the second way is to communicate with your peers about your work. And the communication can help you to know more friends and communicate with them is an enjoyable thing, I think. So I think the two ways can help you resolve your most pressure. So that's my point.
Thank you, Xiang. Very nice advice. Who would like to answer that or talk about that, please? Sue?
Yes, I agree with Chen. Most of the time, as we are like, working with computer all the time and stuck in the lab all the time, and we do need like physical exercise that really help us for our body and mind and spirit too. And the other important thing is like sleeping, because we mostly, for me, it's kind of like we neglect sleeping time because we have to finish everything on time, and then we just skip the sleeping time. We have very less sleep, so that's really affect us. So we need to take a very good rest. So this is also important thing. So, and the other thing is like we skip the meal, and this is also important. It's kind of like not important, but it's really important, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to add something about this. I would say that, I mean, if you are struggling with publications or with your PhD in general, I think one of the, I mean, you can always ask for help with your other PhD students, and or your advisors as well, try to identify what is the problem, because usually there is there is something, there is something there that maybe you're not doing well, you're not doing enough. And if you can identify what is it that you're not doing well, I mean, it's easier to solve this kind of problem. So I would say, like, there's no shame in asking for help. So I would say just talk to your people, talk with your friends, as Xiang and Sue already said, and that would be my advice.
Thank you. Ananda, you have something to say, because you said that you were first your personal life was not good. So what do you have to do or to talk about that? How do you gain confidence to?
Yeah, I think it's constant work with confidence, at least for me. And I always try to believe on myself. Sometimes I don't, but I try to don't give up and keep trying to find a solution that works for me. Also, it's like David said, it's so good to talk to other students. I think my research group, for example, I really like to talk to them about my the things that I'm having trouble to understand, because they have their different perspectives, and it can really help to get out of a hole that you might be in. So yeah, that's my advice. Yeah.
Amir, you have something to add?
Yeah, first I suggest that the students instead of comparing themselves with the other students, they just compare themselves with themselves. I mean, because for example, for struggling with the papers or the publication, in some fields the papers can publish easier. So it's not good to compare students with the other PhD students. Another thing is that to just handle the stress and anxiety. My experience, one good suggestion is to talk with the people that care about them. It makes them to feel better and actually keeping the concerns to ourselves is not a good.
So yeah, great. And I'd like to close the poll, second poll, and you are gonna run just after a third poll. But let's close the poll and before going to the end. Okay, what gives you the most pressure, Max? What do you? Aha, that's easy. Can you comment on that, Matt?
Yeah, sure. So there's quite a bit of distribution here. There's, 30% of you said to have good grades. Roughly a third said for the first three options to have good grades, creating good academic relationships, finding a good job. A little bit more of you said having a good relationship with your advisor was a cause of pressure. The biggest one was time management. 75% of you said time management was the most amount of pressure, followed by writing skills with 54% saying that was the biggest thing, then presentation and communication skills at 46%. So all those things cause pressure, but it looks like time management, writing skills, and things like having a good relationship with your advisor are the top ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
time management, it's a big thing to everyone, even after the PhD. And you want to add something, Dave?
Yeah. I think, I'm impressed with the results. It's very distributed, as Matt said, and yeah, time management, I think, is very important in general. If you are not able to manage your time, you're doomed for failure. Not like that, but it's going to be very, very hard, so you need to have like a really, you have to be very organized in your PhD, in your career, in whatever you're doing. Have like times, working from this hour to this hour, and sleeping is very important. Doing sport is very important. You need to find time for everything, not only for the PhD, because I know a lot of people that only do the PhD, they're only working, and these people at some point, they're not doing that well in general. So for me, it's very important to give time, for other activities, enjoy other things. And this is part, at some point, your brain's relax. I don't know what's happening inside there, but then when you come back working, you have a new perspective about your work, and you can just doing better. So for me, this is essential, time management.
Yes, thank you. And before going to the question of the others, we have not addressed so far some point that's very important that is in the questions from the audience. But before that, let's go to the third poll. Can you launch the third poll, please? And is it on? I cannot see the third one. It is so. Yeah, don't forget something. Let's see what happens. Okay, here we have the worst part. Please answer that. And there are interesting points in the audience. Matt, could you help us summarize what the questions?
Yeah, we have another question about, do you have any advice for part-time PhD students who have had to deal with the pressure from the PhD and also their other job? Or maybe you could also take this to be about, internships or other job-related functions that take you away from your core PhD work. You guys have any thoughts on how you can kind of balance those things?
Would like to get, do you guys have any experience with working?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about this a little bit and related with the one who just explained about time management is quite important. And also, yeah, that's quite interesting. Not everyone, most of the PhD students study, as far as I know, is like they got a scholarship and study with scholarship funding. And also some students, they try to find their own funding. And there are other kind of students like me who are facing kind of like not only study, but also the situation of the country. It's also affects our study. So especially when the country like Myanmar, who is happening the war seriously, is kind of like we have very difficult situation for the time management for both physically and emotionally. So as a student, PhD students, we have enough problems to those deadline and have to finish those things, publication and everything. But and if we don't have the peaceful environments, and then it's really hard to work on that PhD or studying. So there's kind of like financial difficulty, not only for myself, but for the family back in the country when the war is happening, when the people are having suffering the bombing attack or those kind of thing. So at those kind of situation, studying PhD is kind of like a luxurious thing because there are so many important things to solve for foods and for the other life-threatening situation. So in this kind of situation, sometimes personally as current PhD doing PhD and having those kind of crises back home, kind of like thinking, should I, just let go of the things I'm doing right now and trying to, figure it out how to solve the financial crisis back home rather than just doing what I want to do. So this is kind of like very difficult situation. So in this moment for me, currently I'm working like the full-time job and also studying, but I could give just only few time for that, honestly. Meantime, I think like, should I just let go of studying PhD and just focus on finding, the job and more money and supporting the family back in the country or helping the society? I mean, it's like they really, really need help for the foods and, the education sector is breaking down. So it's kind of like consuming my time for only finding self-improvement. It's kind of like selfish and also have the feeling of survivor guilt. I'm surviving and I'm doing PhD for improvement of my life. But meantime, there's so many people suffering because of the war and so many students, they have been arrested, they have been killed, so many lecturers have been tortured. When these kind of things happening and I'm in the other side of the world and studying for my own, it's kind of like really tough. So by means of time management, trying to think the time to study and trying to work for earning for myself and for the family back home, and also the emotional effect of knowing the bad news every day. When I try to read a paper, those things comes up in my mind because seeing the news and the bomb is sheltering around my home, and then I couldn't study well. So this is kind of like a PhD student when the country who live has very serious war situation. So, but I don't have those to cope with this kind of emotion and financial difficulty and also the time management. I don't have any solution, but I'm trying to keep going. I don't know whether I can finish this degree or not because there are so many things drag me down. So I don't know whether I will be a successful PhD, I mean, it's like degree holder or not, but I'm trying to keep going. And meantime, what I want is like, it will be very nice if I could find the similar group like me. So I want to know how you have coped with this kind of situation. What will you do if you were me in this kind of situation? So yeah, I'm not quite sure it's related with this or not, but this is one of the criteria in doing a PhD, and also in the whole education sector happening in Myanmar and maybe in other country. They also might have, who are facing more, like in Ukraine, they also might have students in that country. So I really wonder how these people struggle in this situation. Yes.
No, Sue, very nice that you talked about that. I sympathize very nice, and I all the time tell my students, or when in class, not PhD students, but in class, that they study. And study, let me tell you about the problems that we have in our country, and certainly many parts in the world. And it's very nice that you brought that up. And I should tell to everyone, studying is a way to be able to contribute later. So if you encourage you to finish and to go, and then you can contribute even more to your fellowship, to your people. And be nice. I would love you to give a talk virtually to our students about the problem. We share many problems like that. We are not in a war, but other problems that you mentioned. Great that you brought that up. And Xiang, can you add to some discussion? Maybe Amir also would like to talk about all the issues that we've been discussing. Would like to, okay, you, okay, go ahead.
Okay,
I said you,
so
Amir. Oh, Chen, okay,
Oh.
good. No.
okay. Please go ahead. Okay.
Okay, so regarding the time management, I think actually it also depends on the person's personality. So some people are more organized, but for the PhD, it's important if person thinks is not organized, so they must learn to time management skills. Besides that, I think becoming fresh by, for example, engaging in social activities, keeping life work in balance. So it also helps to be able to manage the time.
Xiang?
Okay. So for me, I think time management is very essential. And I think the important thing, I think, is to make sure that the time of everything fits in your schedule, and try to avoid saturating yourself by finding ways to release your pressure. And for me, I think everyone has his best time management approach, and you need to revise your approach when your approach doesn't work as expected, until you find the one that best suits yourself.
Thank you. And it's time managing. I'd like to add from what you described, it's very helpful for everyone, if you put your schedule, what are your time, what are the time to talk to other people, what are these time to exercise, and put that in your schedule and try to follow that as much as you can. It helps the students. That's what I heard from a lot of students, that if they organize in that sense of way. And I guess there are other questions, very important questions here from the audience, and I would like to address that. We want to talk about loneliness besides schedule and time, but let's see the result of our poll. What happened? Let's close poll number 3 and see what do we have. Haha. Matt.
Okay, so we asked what was the worst part of your PhD? The top choice was lack of confidence as 55%. 53% of you said finding a research topic. Then the next was fear of not getting your PhD degree was 51%. Paper rejection was 42% of you. Peer pressure was 20%. Presenting your work was 20%. And then other was 5%.
Yeah, well, do you guys like to comment on the polls?
Yeah, sure. So lack of confidence. I just will say that this is something that you build, I guess, right? So it's not something that you was born with, and so this is something that you can work on it. Okay, so for me, during your PhD, it's part of the formation. It's part of your formation to get this kind of confidence at some point. I'm sure that at the end of your PhD, you're not going to be the same as at the beginning. So you will be more confident. And if you do as well, I would say that try to exercise, you know, like in the sense that, I don't know, here in my lab, like we organize like once every month a reunion. And everyone has to present their work, you know, like their advancements, their work, and just the fact to be in front of a crowd and just start showing your results or explaining what you're doing. I mean, these kind of things helps a lot to build your inner confidence. So this is something I would say about this part. And finding a research topic, oh my God, that's also a lot, 53%. Well, I don't know, does anyone wants to comment about this, finding a research topic?
Would like to. Anyone wants to comment on that? Finding a research topic about was that. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think I agree with David, and I think lack of confidence is every student would face when they begin their research. And when I was a young student, I faced a lot of paper rejection. I just mentioned that, and I think the key to build yourself with confidence is to continue to try on your research and never give you up. And I think the results would be satisfactory according to myself, my own experience. And I think every student should never give himself up. Yeah, I think.
Yes, and it's very important that as you listen to the answer the students provide, you see that you are not alone in the world. Right? Yeah, many of the problems are common to everyone, and finding research topic, that's common for everyone, and it happens in the different ways to different people, and it's very hard as well, and it's related to lack of confidence. You delay finding a topic, your confidence goes down, but don't stop. That's the keep doing. And before going to the questions of the audience, and there are some comments here, but let's go to the last question or that we had. And after I talk about ask the other questions to the students, we can go to the last poll, the poll number 4. Let's see question. And that's a key point of the PhD. So I'd like to ask to everyone, how do you get along with your advisor? What are the difficulties or the problem, if any? And you can talk about not about yourself, but students that you know, your colleagues, etc. And the poll number 4 is there. Please answer that you help everyone else with your answer. So who'd like to talk about that? Raise your hand.
Okay.
Okay,
So
Chen.
I would like to comment on this question because, okay, so from my perspective, I worked it with different types of advisors. And so I would like to classify my advisors into two classes. I think the first class contains the young faculties. As one of their students, I think the best way of interacting with them is to frequently communicate with them and follow their detailed instructions when doing research. And their experience can help you quickly master the techniques you require to publish papers and present your work and so on. And I think the second class contains senior professors who are very busy and they typically do not have enough time to interact with every student. So I think the best way to interact with senior professors is to schedule a personal meeting with them and report your latest progress to them. In other words, you need to push your advisors to get guidelines on how to handle some questions or problems during your PhD.
Thank you. That's very good advice, and it happens to everyone as well. Who would like to mention, continue to talk about that? David, Amir, Sue?
Okay. I think the yes, like I did an exchange in Germany, and I felt that the environment was very different from Brazil in that sense that how you could, how close you could, or how easy it would be to reach your advisor. So I think there are lots of differences for each country in that sense. But yes, it's always, I think it's very important to be able to work with your independence. But at the same time, of course, it's sometimes there are some moments that you really need also to have help to talk about what you are doing with your advisor. And yeah, that's more or less what I would like to comment about that.
Amir, you were going to mention?
Yeah, I think that's in my experience, it's important to have regular meetings with the advisor, and I always try to keep communication professional during the meetings. And so I suggest the students to really to listen carefully the advisor and just consider the suggestions and opinions. And another thing is just have to use the advisor, because it's one thing I think that's important. For example, if the advisor is not still a tenure, so the is a tenure track, so they are more enthusiasm, and I think they push the students to work harder, but they also have the disadvantages. So I think the students should care, must take it very serious that I mean, if they are tenure or they are pre-tenure.
Sue would like to add something about that?
Yes, yes, when doing PhD research, it's quite important to have a good relationship and like regular meeting with advisor. And I agree with Xiang and every other talking about the types of advisor. So yes, when I have my advisor that I met are kind of like senior advisor, and most of the times are like they're full of schedules, so it's quite hard to get regular time. So when you got a time slot, have to show up everything you do. It's also kind of like the deadline, you know, kind of paper publications deadline. Also like meeting with supervisors is also kind of like very important. They have to show up everything you have at once or like that. So it's also kind of like quite challenging, but trying to bring as much finding and the problems you pop up, prepare very well, and then talk when you get the time slot. Yes, this is how I usually did. Yeah.
And you, David?
I agree with Sue, actually. I think it's very important to build a good relationship with your advisor. And as Sue was saying, you know, like as me, most of my advisor didn't have that much time. So, I mean, they did some time enough, you know, so they will keep some time to see me and work with me. I mean, it's not like just like 15 minutes or half an hour. And for me, the challenge was to present my advances and just said what I needed to say in that window of 15, 30 minutes. So I think that's something that you start, you know, like you start improving with the time, you know, like every time you meet someone, I mean, your advisor you're doing better. And you know what to say, and you know exactly what to show, what to start. So, I mean, having a good relationship, I think it's something that you build. So with your advisor, I mean, even if at the beginning it could be a little bit difficult because you don't really know each other, and it could be a little bit awkward or difficult. But with time and openness, I think every relationship can just. I mean, even if you're not like friends or buddies, you know, but it could be a good professional relationship at some point. So this is something that everyone can do. So that's my thoughts about this.
Yes, and you mentioned something, David. Sometimes talking everything in 15 minutes, 30 minutes, you don't know what to do, and you think, oh, I'd like to have the whole morning with my advisor, and he gives me or she gives me 30 minutes. That's not enough. It happens to everyone, and you need to be organized also to present your stuff to your advisor so that you don't eat up much time, right? I would like to hear from Matt in the other side of the game. What do you about the advisor and student relationship, Matt? From the perspective of the faculty.
Well, I don't know. I really appreciate all the effort all you guys go through to interact with us. I know it can be hard sometimes. I know, you know, us professors, we can be disorganized and we forget things and you have to pester us through email. But, you know, I appreciate, you know, students when you guys are, you know, you're tenacious and you kind of follow up with us about stuff. There was this talk a long time ago. It was a talk on, it was something like how to advise your advisor or something like that. And it was the motivation of the talk was, you know, usually advisors are, you know, have this mindset of we advise students, but, you know, if a student goes into a relationship with an advisor saying that they want to, you know, kind of, you know, they can help the advisor kind of get organized and, you know, come to the meetings and help the advisor remember things and things like that is kind of an interesting mindset, but yeah.
Yes, and sometimes also we in the other side, we feel bad that we don't have as much time as we like with students. Believe me, it's the most enjoyable time, at least for me, to talk about students. I guess most of people talk the same thing. I would like to have more time if I could, but it is enjoyable, and don't feel bad about it. That's my advice. Don't feel bad about trying to reach your advisor. On the contrary, show the interest and things would smooth out at the end. And let's see, there are a couple of questions here that I'd like to address. How much time we have? Whoa, let's, do you think we have time to go to one more question before showing the poll, Matt?
Yeah, we could probably fit one more in, probably. Yeah.
Okay, what do you like to choose?
Okay,
you have a preference here?
There's a question on procrastination. Sometimes you unconsciously, you know, push deadlines forward, and kind of sometimes we feel like we lose motivation, you know, working on a problem, but you just don't seem to be able to get the output, and you kind of push things off. And do you have any advice on how you can deal with procrastination?
Can I go like very quick on this? I mean, for me, procrastination is I mean, it's unavoidable. You know, it happens to me quite often, actually. But what I do is I don't let it too long to get I mean, to go like long enough. You know, so usually try to do something. You know, I usually like to go for a run or change. You know, like just clear my mind. And then, I mean, it works all the time. Then I come back. I mean, if I'm working and I'm doing something, it's stuck, and I start to procrastinate, I just stop working, do something else, come back, and then it's just like magic. It's just flow again.
I have something to add. Sometimes what works for me is to read an inspiring work, for example, that makes me feel very inspired to do something nice as well. So that helps me.
We'd like to talk about this topic. Xiang, Amir, Sue.
Yeah, I agree with David. It's I think that's very good to just stop and go for a walk, listen to music, and just become refreshed. Yeah, that's the best thing to do.
Even if you think in the top of your mind that the Chinese students work 24/7, right? So you feel pressure. But
Okay.
tell us, that's not true, right? Although don't tell that to my students.
Okay, so for me, I think the way of resolving this is to just as David just mentioned, is to find a way to release yourself pressure. And for me, is to do some sports like football. I usually play football during my PhD, and when I play football and I put myself into the football, and after playing, I feel my mind was fresh, and I can continue to my work.
Great. And I guess you are ready to see the last poll. What happens with the last poll? And 1, 2, yep. Oh. Okay. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, so we asked, how do you get along with your advisor? The most common response was, you know, we're maybe not super close friends, but we don't have any, you know, we don't really have problems. A fair number of you said there is a bit of friction at times, you know, maybe a few conflicts. 4% of you said there's, you know, your relationship is rocky or awkward. 16% of you said we're super close friends and buddies, which is great.
It's yeah, it's great. And try to build a relationship. That's the best thing. And hopefully you have time to understand your advisor. I am the other side, the advisor. Try to understand your advisor. That helps. What do I guess you run out of time. We should have something for the closing remarks, Matt. Is that correct?
Yeah. So yeah, thank you everybody for the great panel. We want to remind you that the conversation will continue on the Slack. We just posted a link to the Slack workspace. We invite you all there to keep discussing. We also want to remind you that in 2 weeks, we're going to have our next panel on the topic of software-defined network experience from the Asia Pacific region, led by Bruce Davey. Again, that's going to be held at a different time than normal. It's going to be at 9 a.m. Japan time, but we hope very much you'll join us anyway. And with that, that concludes the panel. Thank you all very much. Yeah, go ahead, Edmundo.
I'd like to add some advice. So from the answers and that the students gave, we all hope in the networking channel that we build a relationship with people from all over the world. Do some networking. That's very nice. You can discuss, and I believe you guys can answer questions, students later on, and keep coming, because the networking is for you guys, it's for the students, it's not for us, right, Matt? It's for you guys. So we hope it helps to exchange experience, bring build up a community. That's very helpful to everyone. And I would like to close from my side. Maybe someone else, maybe students want to close, but from my side,
do not think that your PhD is only about getting a degree. It's an experience that you remain for life. One of the most important lessons that you can learn is how to cope with difficulties, how to overcome difficult problems. All of us have to deal with tough difficulties during our lives, and you can learn a lot through the process of getting a PhD. As you were able to learn in this panel, most of the issues are common to all of you, the fears and the pressures. So use the networking channel to contact students all over the world and to share experience. Well, I guess it's time to say bye-bye. Thank you all, and my apologies for the lack of time to answer all your questions. Matt, it's up to you to close the panel. Thank you very much to all.